All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the January 28th, 2025 meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing we have is our minutes. Gentlemen, do we have any other additions or corrections?
I do not.
I don't either.
Okay.
Thank you.
I move to approve the proceedings of the Board of County Commissioners for Montezuma County for Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the proceedings of the Board of Commissioners, Montezuma County, January 21st, 2025. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, planning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have Mr. Daves here. The first item is an exemption amendment. The Daves own approximately 20 acres that exist there in the northwest corner, or excuse me, southwest corner of the picture there. They are looking to modify that exempted parcel, taking the northeast triangle off of that property and extending their property line to the east. Reason for taking the corner, the northeast corner out is they want to put in a center pivot. So they want to move that section of the property, but then also they're expanding their property to have a little more pasture grazing land. Their house is on the existing 20 acres right now. So they would be adding the rectangle or modified rectangle there to the east on the right and adjoining it to their existing property. This was created by an exemption, so and then it was amended, I believe, in 2019. So this would just be the second amendment to add that other property. Doing the other amendment kind of lets you track the exempted parcel as it changed. It could also be a boundary line adjustment, but then you kind of end up with an exemption and a boundary line adjustment with the same result. The resulting property would be around 38 acres, so it would make sense to also have that rezoned as AR 35 plus, just because of the change of the ag land acreage.
So if I read this properly, the northern triangle is what's coming out.
Correct.
So that the center pivot would go over to that corner.
Right, that little triangle comes off what is existing right now.
And then we're adding from the solid line in the center to the hash line to the right. That's what we're adding to create the 35 or 38.59
Correct.
acres.
Mm-hmm.
So then it would run, I'm going to say north and south with the pivot.
Right.
That's like the pivot line there.
Correct. The north-south east property line would run with the pivot.
There's a fence that goes up that line from
Okay.
BB. There's a corner post right there.
Uh-huh.
That's where the water line comes in and makes a 90. That up above that was side rolls. And so our future plan is to get rid of the side.
Sure.
Ryan, my nephew, is farming it now. So he wants to put a pivot in there.
So we're just adding more to the
Yeah, just squaring it up.
to the base and getting rid of the triangle. That's going to be part of the large.
Yeah,
Okay.
the other's
I think
300 plus acres.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. it's kind of a cleaner deal, 'cause there's no fence there where that other, I don't know why we did it that way in the beginning. There's no boundary, and that way there's a natural, it's already fenced. So we thought we'd just go to the fence line and make it. Should have done that in the beginning.
Hindsight's 20/20. I mean,
Yeah,
all kinds of things change, and sometimes
yeah,
change is good because you make something better.
I guess, yeah.
I don't have any other questions. This is pretty straightforward to me, gentlemen.
It is. I mean, it,
No, I perfectly well understand why you didn't want to change all those side rules.
yeah.
No, they're getting old. They're 30 years old. So we got to do something different.
Yeah.
Now I'm a landowner and he's a leasee, you know, so I have to. But anyway. Yes, sir.
I don't have any problem with
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I move to approve this exemption amendment application to RES number P-8-96 submitted by Frederick Family Living Trust, agent Jennifer Davis, on property located at 12025 Road BB, Pleasant View, Colorado, consisting of 20 acres more or less, and the 3D farms.
Second.
Can we also include the AR 35 plus rezoning?
Yeah,
On-
and they are 35 plus zoning on, which parcel would that be? Is there, on the 38, what was it, 38 acres?
38.59.
38.59 acres.
Second stands.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve an exemption amendment application to RES number P-8-96 submitted by the Frederick Family Living Trust agent Jennifer Daves on property located at 12025 Road BB, Pleasant View, Colorado, consisting of 20 acres more or less, along with a AR 35 plus rezoning to the 38.59 acres adjoining.
Does that cover it, Don?
I think that covers it.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That has been approved. Motion carries. You are good to go, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day. All right, we have another discussion for an after-the-fact setback variance. Do we have?
So this application is an after-the-fact variance for the setback distance on the guest house that is mostly built, currently being built on Miss Webster's property on Road 39. The main house there in the green, that was built back in 2007. It received a setback variance in 2006 for a 20-foot setback before construction. On the guest house, the setback requirements were to be 30 feet from the property line, 60 foot from the center of Road 39, but that didn't happen. So they are requesting an after-the-fact variance.
So we're 8 feet, basically, roughly?
I-
Is that
9 feet.
9 feet?
John, can you talk more about the nature of the property and why the original setback exception was granted?
So,
I can address that because I was here.
That might be helpful.
that's even a better
And
source.
It was addressed then because of that hill off there is so steep behind there. Otherwise, they would have had to go down and build it down in the bottom, basically, because the hill slopes off really hard there, right behind that house. So it was either put it up there or they had to go clear in the bottom to put a house there.
The building envelope doesn't allow me to go to the bottom. It's only up on the top. For the plat, there's no building envelope that it goes down into the pasture.
For her property, for other properties in that subdivision. it
South
does
of me, they can,
go down.
but not
Yeah.
mine.
She's limited, her build envelope is only up on that little skinny section where the house and the ADU are.
So
I
the-
didn't measure what the envelope is, but
Here's the plat here.
Jim Sisko's letter from 2002 stated that it was a 100-foot back from the property line building envelope.
And in actuality, it's about 50 feet before the slope.
This is different.
My house is 24 feet wide.
Do you guys want to see this?
Yeah, and there they show it about 100, but
It's helpful.
50 feet is on top and the other part's on the slope. It's number 2.
So the yellow depicted here on this screen now, that's what we're talking about, though. The house has already been exempted.
The house, the greenhouse.
Yeah, in
That's
2000.
that's the house to the north.
Yeah. So if we're only 9 feet off, we're still basically in the same consistency as the house, 20 feet, rough, I mean, I'm going by rounded.
We're even further back than the house is. We're about 3 feet further to the east than the house is.
So you're about 23 feet,
Yeah,
roughly.
And my variance was 20 feet from the fence line.
so we're within her old variance still.
Mhm.
We're about 21 feet from the fence line, but not within the current county.
And I'll add for the benefit of the board in considering variance applications like this, in general, the county's adopted, a uniform set of threshold standards to promote the purpose and intent of the land use code, which is to preserve the rural character of the county and to not allow significant adverse impacts to other properties, but the variance process largely exists so that the board has an opportunity to consider each individual property in the event that strict application of the land use code would be unjust. And so the board can consider, the specific nature and the specific circumstances of each property to see if it's in the interest of justice to make a variance to the uniform standards if the proposed use still conforms with the purpose of the code.
So then, I guess the only real question I have here is the septic tank is already installed and the leach field, that's already been approved and.
Correct. Craig Wickstrom did the engineering. That's already approved through the health department and permitted.
Okay,
and
so
it's
there's no
down-
issues with that going, I guess, to the north? Is
Yeah,
that
it's,
correct?
well, the septic tank is down the hill. The leach field is actually down right where it starts to flatten off there. That was the only place we could get it.
So it's, the issue with me is not so much where it is,
It's
if
not
this
compliant.
was before it got built.
Right, it's after the fact.
It wasn't intentional.
Questions, gentlemen?
My question is why are we here for an after the fact?
Because it's built in the wrong spot.
I mean, there's a contractor sign out front. Why, I mean, we've had a code for 20, 25 years. This contractor should have known to be in here to check all of that before this was even started. I mean, there's no hazards here, but it's getting time when we need to enforce our code and stand by it. I mean, I understand why you're here.
So let me ask you another question then. Could have you not moved it back the other 8 feet or 9 feet? I mean,
It's right on the edge. I mean, yeah, with more cost, sure, we could have, built it up, and the deck is sitting on piers. There's a deck, if you look off to the east side there, it is elevated over that slope. We kind of put the building right where the slope breaks, and so the deck is sitting on piers that allow it. But yeah, I mean, as you know, you're in construction, you can largely do anything.
yeah, I mean, correct. And you knew you had to have an exemption for the house, but Commissioner Lindsay here is like, why did we do it twice with the knowledge that, and I'm going to go back to the builder also because they should know the codes.
Yes.
Well, I can
Number
represent,
one.
I'll
So-
speak for the builder.
Um,
And I'll be honest, we did site planning, we have images before we built that look at setbacks. We have our tail between our legs right now, talking to you all. This, I don't know. I'll be honest, I feel like I'm really embarrassed being here, because we do look up code, like I said, we have drawings that show setbacks, we're really careful with this stuff. I don't quite know what happened. When we excavated, my guys did the layout, we measured. I remember being out there with the tape measure and looking at the fence and looking at the setback. And then here we are at 51 feet from center line, 9 feet short. In the busyness of construction, we moved in a little bit because of the slope, and that's why we're here. There wasn't anything intentional or trying to pull one over or anything. This was an error. And, following Ms. Webster's direction as well, as far as where she wanted it, that was in play as well, and knowing where the house was, feasibility of getting a vehicle in there, a driveway, kind of room to park, all those things came into play. So I hear you about the need to follow the code. I don't know how else to say that. I know it's a pretty black and white thing, or not pretty, it is. The limiting factors obviously being, or I think, the previous variance, the build envelope being what it is, that it is tight. Cost, Dawn brought up cost. Obviously that's a thing. It wasn't the driving, we weren't trying to put it there so we could save money, but also knowing that, the deeper the foundation is, the more we're cantilevered over that slope, and building, more concrete, that costs go up too. So there's some variable here where we decided that this was the location that was most feasible. And then at that point, we didn't check our measurement again, because we did check it several times in the beginning. I remember putting stakes in the ground.
Commissioner? I mean, here's where I'm at, because this puts us into a situation of, I mean, we have a land use code and we have a lot of people doing it right. And now variances do nothing but erode the land use code. So basically, it's like, whether it was an honest mistake, and I get that, however, it erodes the land use code, because I'll just go do this, come in after the fact, ask for a variance, and I don't care what the next guy does down the road.
Yeah.
We have to do this equally. So I'm just trying to explain. I mean, we're in a,
Yeah.
first of all, I hate variances, period. I don't like them at all, because as a builder, I look at it totally different, because there's no reason you couldn't have moved it back the 8 feet.
Sure.
None at all.
Yeah.
And if you chose not to do it for whatever the cost, I get that, and the math didn't work out, then, you could have went and found a building envelope or asked that request through the HOA, or I'm not sure who sets your building envelopes. However, this house is probably 50%. It's framed, the way it looks from the pictures.
Yeah, it's framed. It's dried in, yeah.
But there comes a point in time to where and it's been done in the past, to where they've told them, move the house.
Mhm.
You have no choice but to move the house, or you pay a fine,
Mhm.
which that also we can levy also,
Yeah. Understood.
because we're not wanting. What do you think, guys?
Excuse me, can I relate some communication I had with the county when I purchased this property? I bought it in 2002, and when I bought it, before I purchased it, I brought two people out. One was a builder. I said, is this a buildable lot? It looks very small. And he said, yes, it is. And I called the county, and I think I probably called zoning. And this is 2002, and I talked to a woman on the phone, and I don't have her name. I looked through my files. And the original setback was 50 feet. And I told her, there's really only like 50 feet on top. I wouldn't be able to build something here if I have to follow that. And she said to me, well, do the best you can. And that gave me the feeling there was some flexibility here. And then my builder went 4 years later and applied for the variance and got it. So I wouldn't have bought the property if I hadn't had that reply from the woman I talked to at the county. Because there really isn't more than, it's not really 100 feet flat on top. It really is 50 feet from the fence line. So, but I did try to do the right thing. And then we did do the right thing getting the variance here. And the variance we got was 20 feet from the fence line, and the ADU now follows that. And so it's my fault from thinking, oh, this is for the property variance as opposed to just my house and the garage variance. So where the house is now follows this variance. It's just that we didn't apply for a new variance when we applied to build the
Correct.
house.
So, just for your knowledge, because you've already stated it, the setbacks were 50 feet. We've heard and we've listened to a lot of people,
Right.
and we changed it to 30 feet. Because we're like, this is too restrictive, we need to make it, I mean, this is a perfect example, so we took 20 feet away. But, I mean, if we keep eroding the code, it's just like, well, build it right on the lot line and take your chances against the road. It's,
Yeah, I think my property is a really, it's not a perfect example. Everyone else who's south of me in the Grace Ranch subdivision is down below the road. They're on the slope.
right.
On
Where
my
you're-
property, I wasn't allowed to build down there, and I wouldn't have wanted to build in the floodplain.
Sure.
So,
So you picked a good spot, you're within your building envelope. The only issue I have is that you could have spent $1,000 with the machine and moved it back the 10 feet or 8 feet or 9 feet or whatever. We wouldn't be in this situation today. So we have a choice. We can grant the variance, we can deny the variance, or we can fine you. Is kind of the only three applications that we have in front of us today.
Yeah, I think I would just encourage the board to consider really the purpose of the land use code and how it applies to this specific property, because that's really the intent of the variance process in itself, is to determine if proposed uses that are outside of the normal threshold standards either do or don't serve the purposes of the land use code. And that decision of the board should be tailored as much as possible to the specific nature of the property, because there are also some due process considerations for the board in making decisions insofar as variance applications, whether they're granted or denied. There is an overriding due process angle in that similarly situated properties should be treated similarly. And so I would just encourage the board to really focus on the nature of the property and whether or not the proposed use and the proposed variance either does or does not further the purpose of the land use code.
May I just read this last line on the variance that we got in 2006? It says, given the physical constraints of the property, the Board of County Commissioners approved the request for variance. So they did it on the basis of how narrow my property was on top of the
And I
hill.
understand that, but that's in the
Okay.
past. You already knew what the land use code states. We moved the variance or the property to 30 feet, not 50 feet. So you already were aware. You were not ignorant to the land use code and what you already had to go through at that time. That's what hangs me up. I just, gosh, I'm like, it would have been nice for you to come in ahead of things to say, look, here are the physical conditions that I am faced with, and we could have been having a different conversation. Now we have a conversation of like, so it's different. And again, I look at properties different than probably most because I look at them as every property is buildable, whether it's a swamp, whether it's a mountaintop. Every property is buildable. It's just what do you have to do to make it buildable? And I get it. I mean, if you're having to dig into the side of a mountain, I understand that, but it's a lot easier to have a conversation up front than here we are on the back side of it. Can we, obviously, to make you move the house, that's kind of unreasonable. However, it could happen. I don't think that I would want to go down that path right now, but.
One thing I'll add in response to that comment, just from the legal perspective, the board isn't bound by previous decisions of a prior board, but I think it can certainly be considered as part of the record. It can have some persuasive effect, but it's not binding on the board.
I guess you're probably not going to want to hear what I have to say, but I'm going to say it. I have to say it because I have to protect everybody equally. Again, I just said to move the house is probably an unreasonable ask. However, at some point in time, we're going to have to ask people to move or gain other property. In this situation, purchasing other property is not going to do you any good. So I would almost say, can we look at it with the attorney for a week and table it and see what the fines that we can levy, and maybe just adjust a fine to this with a variance approval and then go on. But I'm going to also ask you to talk to your builder and all the other builders out there to follow and make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else, and help us try to maintain the 30 feet, because we're not rewarding people for doing the right thing. We're basically rewarding the opposite. So if you gentlemen are okay with that, can we table this for a week? We'll deal with it next week, and I guess I'm headed down the fine situation. I'm not sure what that will or can be. But then it shows that we're not just saying, come in here and beg for forgiveness after the fact when you knew what it was in the beginning.
I guarantee you after this experience, I will be an advocate for setbacks. Yeah, and make sure that, everyone I know that's a builder in the county knows how serious this is. So I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Go ahead. and move it.
Yeah, I would so move we table this till next week. What's on your calendar, Jane?
We would have to do it at 9:10,
Okay,
since we have a public hearing at 9 o'clock.
We don't have to do a time certain.
okay.
No,
So we'll just do it after the.
After the
okay.
public hearing.
public hearing.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to table this after the fact variance setback application submitted by Laura Webster on property located at 8400 Road 39, Mancos, Colorado, consisting of 7.82 acres more or less. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you. I assume you guys want us back, yeah.
I would,
Yeah.
I would definitely show, yeah. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so number 3, Don, it looks like we're looking at another after-the-fact variance application. Do we have the applicant?
I
Doesn't look like
do
it.
not see her here, but you're correct. It's another after-the-fact variance.
Okay. All right, well, give us an overview on this one.
So, Miss Vincent owns a property just north of the city limits on Mildred Road. She contacted us to add an ADU on her property. When I looked up the property, again, the carport there at the southwest corner looked too close to the road to meet the required setback. That carport was built, I think, in fall of '23 or first part of '24. It's 6 feet too close to the required 30-foot setback.
So I would almost say, gentlemen, let's table this one also because this structure's already built. And we'll look at the fine fee with our attorney and then we can make that decision next week also. What are your thoughts?
So moved.
So, yeah.
All right,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to also table this after-the-fact variance application submitted by Quita
Weeda.
Weta.
Quita.
Vincent on property located at 10756 Road 26, Cortez, Colorado, consisting of 3.10 acres more or less. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll deal with those next week after we have a discussion with our attorney.
Fair enough.
All right. Any other discussion items?
No, and to answer your question on how we educate these builders, I cannot answer that.
We've tried.
I know.
They're told 30 foot from the property line or a minimum of 60 foot from the center of the road, so you can't get to 50. But, and both of these, they didn't contact us. I found out where they were built wrong, so.
Previous fines, do you know? I know of one.
Only one I'm aware of is one. I wasn't here, and it was a long time ago up the
Right.
Dolores River.
It was a pretty substantial fine. Actually, I thought he had to also move it.
No, I
I
think
thought
what
the
they
foundation was
decided,
moved.
as opposed to moving it, I think they might have limited any further building onto it
Yeah.
or a height restriction, but it was about a $7,000 fine. But that was close proximity to the Dolores River, which,
How did they arrive at that number, do you know?
Oh, I
Square
have-
footage?
I guess that's what I'm wanting to research. That's why I'd like to put it off a week. I mean, I don't want this just to be arbitrary and
Right.
capricious. I would like to have
right?
something that is,
I would
Something
have to
that we
do
can
some
go by.
investigating and see what, because
and there were,
it was a lengthy discussion and it went back and forth for, I
yeah.
think, a few meetings.
here again, the question is education. How are we failing on our education piece to get, are we going to
Well,
the?
I don't always know that it's education. It sometimes might be for convenience.
Yep.
We even paid for having inserts into the property tax envelope last year,
Right.
so.
Yeah, but I mean, to the average person, I can see they read that and it doesn't affect them at that point in time. They're gonna discard it. It's not even gonna, go through their memory.
It gives them a little bit of knowledge that they have to contact.
Right, unless they're just doing it
And it
themselves.
has
The
helped a little bit,
builders
but not a lot.
are the ones that are more subject to it, so. All right, we'll have a further discussion and we'll go from there and try and come up with something that makes sense.
All right. I'll look into that, see what I can find. I don't even know. That was in the 90s, I believe, early 2000s maybe.
Early two
Anybody-
thousands,
Yeah, it
and
was-
actually the last one was probably late,
Were you there, Gerald?
15, 16, 17.
Remember.
I don't know on the
I don't think you were. I
the
think it was
deck
after
patio at
property.
the riverbank.
Huh?
Mhm.
Property.
I don't know if that was fined or not.
I think it was.
I'll look up both of those.
Look at that one. I'm talking.
Because we had the house,
farther up.
and then they had the
I could be wrong.
gazebo or whatever,
Correct.
both
And there
up
was
the
another
Dolores
one that
River.
was farther up the river.
All right.
There's been some, and they actually have fine levies against
So
them.
that could be two of them.
Yeah.
I'll look into that.
I mean, we listen to the people, we move the setbacks back. I don't know what else.
Well,
Okay, enough of that. We'll deal with it next week.
All right, fair enough.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, moving right along, we're going to go to the public comment session. The Board of Montezuma County Commissioners welcomes you to this meeting. Persons speaking during public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, or depending on the number of people wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all the members of the public the opportunity to address the board. When addressing the board, please state your name and address for the record prior to providing your comments, and comments to individual supervisors or staff are not permitted, and participants may not yield their time to others. And with that, the public comment session is open.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Alan Mays, 21693 County Road 21. With these last two planning situations, I know it's a tough job, and so I understand the reason for wanting to have some time to look into it. I had to ask the question. I have no idea what there's a group apparently in the county, and I don't know what their purpose is, so I'm going to ask the question for education of building contractors. I'm not sure of the correct name of the group, but something like Homeowners Building Association, and I don't know what their purpose really is, so that's why I'm asking the question. Maybe they're the ones that really need to get out there. If there's a group that builders, developers come together to talk about things, maybe that's one of those things that needs to happen. Whether there is something like that already, or maybe something needs to be put together. So that was my only point, was maybe there needs to be a group of developers and builders that meet and talk about these things, especially the land use code. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. All right, seeing no further public comment, we'll close the public comment session, and we are going down to social services, but we were told to go past you. Is that, come
No.
on down.
that was.
Come on down. That's
CDOT.
just for the MOU,
Yeah.
for CDOT. Well, let's,
Yes?
Yeah, that was the one that we was looking to correct?
Yes.
Yeah, we're
I
okay.
do think that the corrected MOU and the 5311 contract that was sent just
Thank you.
to Commissioner Candelaria probably need to be talked about. I think the 5311 has to be approved prior to the 31st.
Okay.
Um,
So I got one at 2:02 a.m.
Sounds right.
I didn't look at it at 2:02 a.m., but I just got another one now. So would that be the one? Can I forward it to you, Travis, and you can display it?
Yeah, this is the 5311. And so I would just start with, I have explained the process to CDOT for contracts multiple times. They not only continue to email them directly to Commissioner Candelaria, so I don't have access to them to present them to Stephen for review. They continue to also send them to Jennifer Morris, which is a little bit frustrating on my end because I've made requests multiple times. So I apologize for the way that this is being presented. I can't find it. I tried to find it. I tried to call CDOT this morning on both contracts and they didn't answer. This one does have, the 5311 has to be signed by January 31st, and this is the funding that we use to support MoCo. It covers 80% of administration costs and 50% of general operating costs. It is a match, so the 20% match and the other 50% for operating. This was increased by about $4,000 this year, so it's $164,000 that we are granted. With match, it's a $291,000 contract. It does cover the vast majority of MoCo expenses.
So the 20% match is nothing new to us. That's been consistent since I've been here.
Yep.
And again, I think this is, when I first got this, I forwarded it to you, Travis.
Yeah, and the one you just forwarded is the same
Yeah.
one that looks like it's on
Yeah.
the screen now.
This is the one that just came in at 9 o'clock. So, oh yeah, I've got several of them on here.
And I can't open the link that they sent. It shows me that something has been sent to you, but when I go to review the document, I can't access it. Probably because it has Jennifer Morris as the emailer.
Anyway, do you want to just, Stephen, do you have any questions on this? It looks pretty standard with the basic contracts that we've been signing with CDOT.
Yeah, that would be my expectation too. I would just ask Ms. Hargraves, have you had an opportunity to look at this now as far as what commitments are being made, on the county's behalf?
Yeah, it's the same contract as the year before, as far as language within it. Lots of obligations from our side, which isn't anything new. And so I don't have concerns with the contract as it's written.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just add that I think consistent with these kinds of contracts from the state and specifically from CDOT, some of the terms are not particularly favorable to the county. For example, the state can essentially terminate this agreement if they determine it's no longer in the public interest. But I think that's kind of realistically the cost of doing business with the state, is that if the county wants to receive these funds and provide these services, the terms are not very favorable. And so I think that's kind of the reality of it, and it's up to the board to enter into the agreement or not. I don't think there's much opportunity to negotiate those kinds of terms in this kind of thing.
We haven't had any luck trying to negotiate anything, even when Ian was here, anything.
Yeah.
It's just, I hate to say it is what it is, but we also haven't had any issues with them either,
And-
operating.
And I don't foresee any issues.
For the transportation needs.
And as far as the representative that I work with biweekly, he's responsive. We certainly talk about issues as they arise, and so I don't foresee anything coming up that can't be resolved.
So that's what I got at 9 o'clock, gentlemen, if you want to look through it, but it's basically the same contract.
Yes.
Gerald, do you have any?
No, I don't.
I would so move, we authorize the chairman to sign agreement number 25-HTR-00143/4911003-831.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the agreement with the state of Colorado for Department of Transportation for Montezuma County's MOCO. The agreement number is 25-HTR-Z11, or ZL. Sorry, I said new glasses.
New glasses.
Sure.
They're working
Dash
well.
00143 /491003831. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And then there's the other MOU for the regional, and that's just an MOU that basically outlines as a region how we're going to collaborate as a regional transit council. Stephen was able to view that MOU. They have agreed to switch it from 4 to 3 years. They agreed to email me about the language, specifically in number 3 that says at this time, no financial commitment. I requested that we remove at this time and say no financial requirement. They have not responded and have not returned my call since that request. What I would say is that we could tentatively say we agree to this MOU with the 2 shifts, that it goes from 4 to 3 and that at this time be struck from the MOU. And if they refuse to do that, then I will bring it back next week potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'd pulled that off the agenda this week because of those issues, so we'll have to bring it back next week.
Yeah, it's not even on there.
Okay, not even on there.
So that one is not anything that we'll take any action on today. So we do have the records of proceedings. Gentlemen, you want to take care of this and the financial?
Yes. I would so move, we accept the minutes of the regular session of Board of Social Services from Tuesday, December 31st, 2024, and also the financials in the amount of $1,477,239.83.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the record of proceedings for Tuesday, December 31st, 2024 for the Department of Social Services, and also the payables for December 2024 in the amount of $1,477,239.83. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. Do you ladies have anything else?
Did you see those beautiful wraps?
Yes.
They look good.
I did. Driving out on the highway the other day, I saw 2 of the buses, and the purple sticks out.
Yep, they
Yeah.
are on every vehicle. They look really nice. They look really sharp. Folks keep honking at us and giving us the thumbs up as our drivers are driving around town. But they do look really nice. So that's good. We have been very busy in MOCO. I think we talked maybe last time, there's a credentialing process for billing Medicaid. The state requires HCPF specifically requires a long list of requirements to reduce all the Medicaid fraud that was happening with transportation. Pretty exciting news. We have been working since October to get our credential. We got our credential on Friday. Took us long enough. But some of the local vendors are not credentialed yet, and so they're not able to bill Medicaid. So we have gotten all of their overflow, and our drivers are very, very busy, which is great. We'll keep trucking along. So those are good things. I did want to let you all know there's a new director of social services for the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, Kenny Victor. I have had regular communications with him and have a meeting scheduled today from 4 to 5 to meet with him. I certainly am hopeful that this will help resolve some of the child support services jurisdictional issues that we have and some of our child welfare jurisdictional issues. So I hope that's productive. It's really exciting and awesome. Montezuma County was selected for an ME review, which is a HICPUF quality assurance review. That'll happen in October, and it's to go over all rules governing Medicaid medical assistance programs. That'll be very extensive, and has happened across the state, but this year we drew the lucky straw. We have 5 ARDs this week, which is Administrative Review Division for Child Welfare. So we have our ARD gentleman coming down to do some internal reviews. So everybody has been very busy. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was CCAP. As you know, there's been lots of publicity, some media from other directors across the state. This morning, I did receive an email from Stephen. Larimer County is really leading the charge because the program's underfunded. So they're overspending their allocation and then diving into county-only dollars. They've put their program on a freeze, as have many other counties. I think there's 14, due to the lack of funding for the program. However, the state is basically saying, there's some rules for TANF and other programs that are going to require you to enroll even though you're overspending. And so there's been letters written to the JBC from multiple counties. But ultimately, Larimer County is saying, hey, this isn't going to work, and the state's feedback isn't really conducive. And so the state went to the JBC and said, hey, if counties don't want to run this program, we can turn it over to the state. And that comes with its own issues, one of which is that if we turn it back over to the state, we're still going to have to pay our 20%, and we're not going to be running it. And in addition to that, the state has had some conversations about becoming state-ran versus county-ran, and so this could be one of their methods to creating a state-ran system. And so ultimately, our CCAP budget is not going to overspend this year. As far as we're looking right now, we're continuing to monitor it very closely. You can see from the financials, we're 2% over, so we have seen a small increase, but nothing substantial. However, if it came to a point where we were going to overspend, I would also ask you for a freeze. And so what Larimer County, along with other counties, is asking from all counties is saying, hey, let's all get together and ask the state for some dispute resolution. And so what I'm asking you all is to allow Stephen and I to participate in that dispute resolution in regards to CCAP, so that it doesn't become an area where we are overspending and forced to overspend an allocation. Rule right now says that CCAP does not have to be overspent. It's one of the allocations that we are not required or mandated to overspend. And so I'd like to participate in that, join that cause. I think it's worthwhile. And while it's not a direct issue for us today, it certainly could be an issue for us next year.
And I'll add that that dispute resolution process, the reason why that's being specifically looked at is because that's the mechanism in the statute for this program whereby we're supposed to try to work through whatever issues we have. So that's the card that can be played basically by the counties, and that's what there's starting to be momentum behind, is how do we initiate that process, and can we all get together basically to be a stronger unit on this issue with the state.
I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of that from the state this year. I mean, the JBC has already made a statement. They don't have the money to fund all these programs. We've already gotten emails of things they're taking away. I mean, I don't know if I don't have an issue with you participating in the conversation, but at the end of the day, if they don't have any money, they're not going to fund it. And if they want to take it over, is that really that bad of a thing? I mean, we're paying the 20% now. I mean, I don't know. I don't like giving away that to the state.
What's the 20% going to be if the state takes it over?
It's going to be nothing but administrative fees, so I struggle with that. So, yeah, join the conversation and see
I
where
would
we
say
can
so,
get.
yeah, before we end up on the menu.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that forcing us to overspend an allocation as a county is not the right move. Especially when the statute specifically says CCAP doesn't have to be overspent. It's one of those allocations that when it's spent, it's frozen.
It's another unfunded mandate.
Yes, yes it is.
It is, yep.
Great,
And hopefully we don't see any of those this year, but we will.
Oh, yes, we will.
we will.
So speaking of that, for the rest of this week, Thursday and Friday, do you have anything else that is at the top of your radar for voting for Thursday, Friday?
I was just
For me?
actually looking at the list to send on to you all. The bill that was presented late last night on transition plans for child welfare has me very concerned. I need to dive into all of those and I'll send you my thoughts. But that bill in particular requires additional mandates for child welfare when children change placements, which I think is an appropriate measure. We should plan transitions for kids. But that's not the way that it happens. When a provider says, this is my notice, this is my notice. We can't keep kids in placements longer than that moment. And sometimes transition plans just are not possible. So I see it as great. It's a best practice and we try to do that every time. I don't think that there should be a state mandate requiring us to formulate transition plans for every placement change when sometimes, and most often, when those disruptions are happening, it's because a provider has said, this has to end today.
Yeah, and I think we need to be really specific what transition plans mean, because there's two definitions now.
Agreed. It requires additional training, it requires additional work, and I can tell you right now, child welfare is taxed to the bone with requirements, with documentation, with planning. They have a lot already, and I think mandating additional transition plans, it isn't wise. I think we should do that. That should be a general best practice, and we do that when we can. But the specific issues that are asking even for this bill to be brought forward are those placements that just blow. And so when a kid has a hard time in a placement and that placement provider says, nope, today is my last day, this child needs picked up, we can't make a transition plan. We can't get professionals together. We can't. We are literally finding an alternative placement. That's all we can do. And so I am opposed to that. Kind of disappointed that it came in the 11th hour last night, but I will send you feedback for the
There's gonna
6
be
bills.
Get used to that.
Yeah, there will be a lot more.
Yeah, yeah, I will send some feedback on the 6 bills that I know you guys are gonna talk about on Friday.
Okay.
I also wanted to, sorry, I feel like I have a lot of updates this week, let you know, the state, specifically HICPUF, is moving to a broker system for transportation again, and they are gonna roll that out in 2026. That makes things really complicated for rural communities. And so,
Rural communities don't exist. I'm sorry.
yeah, they had a presentation and a Q&A yesterday that I found really disappointing, especially in response to rural communities and the significant impacts broker systems have on rural communities. And so the best I can say is that we're going to start planning, talking to our clients, making sure that they request us, hoping to figure that out before 2026, because it really does impact. It impacts the number of rides, it impacts how we operate, ultimately impacts the bottom line. So I'm also disappointed in that. It's just a day full of disappointment.
The frustration is going to build.
Yeah,
Well, send me your comments.
I will.
Prior
Yeah.
to Friday morning, because that one will kick off first thing Friday morning.
Yeah.
Right now, I only have 5 on my table, but you said that one was just added last night, so
Yeah.
there'll be 6 that we vote on Friday morning. Okay.
Excellent. Anything for me?
I have nothing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Laura.
guys. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, now we're going to jump into unfinished business, and we only have one. We have a critical links habitat designation. Mr. Dietrich, I know that you have a letter ready for us.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Can you hear me at that? Yeah, I guess you can. Okay, so yes, I do have a draft letter here that addresses the critical lynx habitat designation. After doing some research on this, it appears, of course, they're always saying use the best available science. So one of the best studies that has recently come out was entitled Genetically Protected but Naturally Disturbed, a Specialist Carnivore at its Southern Range Periphery. Essentially what this study is really coming down to is that the greatest threat that the lynx seems to be experiencing down in southwest Colorado is wildfire and insect outbreaks. The proposed critical lynx habitat designation doesn't do anything to address either one of those situations. All it focuses on is the anthropogenic factors that are applied here. About 67% of the critical lynx habitat that's being proposed is already within either wilderness or national monument, has the highest level of protection that's available. And about 4% of that proposed area is within, say, a developed resort, Vail, for example, or Aspen. The other thing is, if you look at the maps on that, most of those areas that are already heavily developed are surrounded by either protected area or area that's considered to be unlikely lynx habitat. So all the way around, the whole lynx habitat just appears to be kind of an exercise in just layering up protection. Doesn't appear to do anything to help really advance the lynx habitat preservation down in southwest Colorado. In fact, it could actually impede some of it because we really need access to some of those areas to try to work on wildfire and insect outbreaks. Areas that could be impacted by that are limited in Montezuma County. However, statewide, there's some implications, especially when you look at some of the habitat that's being proposed over on the eastern side, over around South Fork. So anyway, I've done my best here to come up with some recommendations that are associated with this lynx habitat designation. I'll go through those recommendations. The first one is really just don't fix what isn't broke. This habitat designation really doesn't do a whole lot all the way around. So the lynx appear to be sustainable. Their numbers appear to be improving. So again, what more are we going to gain by placing another critical habitat designation on a species that appears to be doing fairly well on its own? Numbers were always traditionally pretty low in the southwest corner of the state. There were lynx here, historically. There's some lynx here now. And again, their numbers are not really high. They're always dependent upon snowshoe hare and red squirrel populations. Both of those are being affected by both insect and wildfire. So the potential for high quality lynx habitat in southwest Colorado, I think, is pretty low. It's probably the best in the state, but it's still low. So we're responding really to a court order that U.S. Fish and Wildlife was given to essentially go out and designate more habitat. And so that's where they're at with that. So recommendation number 2, since the court order appears to demand additional designation, try to pick the minimum amount that meets that criteria. Recommendation number 3 would be exclude all private lands. It's only 4%. Most of those private lands are not really a significant factor for that critical wildlife designation. And the recommendation number 4 would be identify local collaborative groups who are already doing resilient forest work. For example, the DWC, which we're trying to address wildfire and insect outbreaks. And then recommendation number 4 is help coordinate and facilitate and approve funding for forestry resiliency projects within lynx habitat. And so that's what I have for a draft. Commissioners are comfortable with where we're at with this. We can move forward with it. Otherwise, I'll make some adjustments to it. We do need to turn this in by 5 o'clock today.
I've read it. I don't have any issues with it. Thank you. I appreciate your time and efforts on it. And I appreciate the statement of basically, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Leave it alone.
I'm going to preach to the choir, but you were here when the DOW at the time, Division of Wildlife, reintroduced lynx to the area.
Yes, it was.
And they told us straight out in a meeting that the lynx introduction would have no impacts. Well, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, sign that letter.
I move to sign this letter for the critical links habitat designation in southwest Colorado, FWS-R6-ES-2024-0142.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to sign the critical links habitat designation for southwest Colorado. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, James. Anything else?
No, I think that's it for me today, unless the commissioners have something more.
I do not.
Thank
Okay.
you, James.
Okay, you bet.
All right, moving right along, Mr. Tarnowski, what do you have for us today?
Turn this on. There's a lot of things going on that I've been involved in over the past week or so. Just at the end of last week, Mr. Anderson and I participated in a pre-election conference regarding the potential unionization of the sheriff's office. So we participated in that. At this point, there's been a sufficient showing of interest, essentially, to require an election to be had of the members of the potential bargaining unit. So that's really what we were talking about there. We're still waiting to hear back from the Department of Labor about how they're going to conduct that election and when that might be. We were advocating for an in-person election because they would just get it done a lot faster. But what the comments we heard from the Department of Labor representative was that they would have to come down here personally from Denver. And so given the relatively small number of employees that would potentially be involved, they didn't sound like they were planning on coming down here. So we're probably looking at a election by mail. And so we'll continue to work together to make sure the county's fulfilling the obligations we have under the law that was recently passed about this, which is just called COBCA, which is about collective bargaining for county employees. And I've also been in touch with a law firm that's represented a lot of counties throughout the state on these kinds of issues. And the specific attorney that La Plata County worked with is retiring, so I've been talking to another lady who's been working together with him on those issues, and she's been a help in helping me navigate this process. And I expect that she'll be sending me a proposed engagement letter if the county wants to retain that firm for any eventual negotiations that might happen as part of this process, which frankly I would recommend. Sounds like a lot of counties are doing this, and that expertise is valuable, I think. Speaking of new legislation, I just want to flag for the commissioners too, I did reach out to our clerk's office about a new Senate bill that was introduced, Senate Bill 1, which is called the Colorado Voting Rights Act, I believe. And what caught my attention was there were specifically one of the sort of prongs of this proposed legislation is just titled Election and Voting Statutes Related to Indian Tribes. And so as one of the two counties in the state with an Indian reservation in our boundaries, I thought that's probably particularly relevant to our county. So I'm planning on getting together with Kim and Danielle maybe next week when Kim's back from her conference that she's currently at to talk about how some of these proposed changes would impact our county. Sounds like initially it would cost a little more potentially because there's some additional requirements for how elections would need to be conducted if this bill were to be passed. So that's still in the works. Haven't had an opportunity to really talk in depth about that, but that seems like something that could make some pretty significant changes to how elections are conducted in Colorado. And I know a lot of other counties are looking at that proposed bill too.
So that was highlighted, I'm just going to jump in here for
Sure.
a second. We highlighted that Friday as we went through that bill table. And this has been introduced in the past, and I think Kim had told us last time that I'm not sure, maybe you guys are, but they don't know how to print a ballot with ute and ute language because they don't really
don't have
have
a
a
written language.
written
There's no written
language.
language.
So we're not, what are we gonna do as far as, how do we even do it? How do we even comply with it? I wanna say it only affects 2 counties in the state. The rest of them all will be mostly English and Spanish. But this affects us dramatically, so I have this one highlighted. There'll be, I'm sure, a lot of conversations on this on Thursday and Friday also, but
Okay.
if you can look into that further, I don't want to overstate that, but I'm pretty sure that that is a reality. How do we print a ballot with nothing to put on it?
Can I jump in there for a second?
Sure.
I don't know, there might be some language questions in there, but the big point that I remember talking to Kim about was that it extends the obligation of how long the voting center must be open over there. So it changes it from either a request of 2 days to 4 days to all the way up to a 15-day voting center open on tribal lands.
So if you can get that information to me, emailed to me
Yeah,
no
Kim
later
has-
than Thursday
Kim has
morning?
like a good breakdown already. I think she already submitted something to the state, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
So that would be the big cost, is a 2-week-long voting center, in-person voting center there.
And then do we have a cost associated with it?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but yes, Kim has
If we
them.
can, I mean, because there again, that's just going to be another unfunded mandate that I'd like to have a real cost for us in this county to say, well, then you're going to, I mean, if you're going to make this law, you need to fund this law.
Yeah, I'll ask with Kim, I'll get with Kim, and
Okay.
we'll see what number she has, because I know she did a lot of work on figuring that out, too.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Stephen.
No,
I'll let you-
no worries. Another issue that there's been some developments on is the county's continued litigation with the Ironwood property. Recently, there was a notice of a sheriff's sale of the properties, and so I reached out to Kelly McCabe, who's representing the party who's owed money and who's forcing the sheriff's sale about that. At this point, it's really not clear how that process is going to go. If the property is going to proceed to the sheriff's sale, sounded like there were still some options that were being explored, but I wasn't able to really get a definitive answer on how that's going. That's unknown at this point. And so that could potentially impact the county's litigation and the fine schedule that's currently in place. Right now, what I'm understanding is that there is a lot of activity going on up there as far as shredding, and there's plans to bring in the machines to convert that material to biochar. And that could all change potentially if the property were to be sold to someone else. Right now, my understanding is that if a new owner takes over that property, it would functionally be something of a reset. I'm really not convinced that that new property owner would be bound by our case, because the parties in that case are really the company, Ironwood, and then the people who are owners or operators of that company. So there's a lot of unknowns about that. What we've done is, Ms. Hickerson and I, the attorney for CDPHE, and I, we have filed a notice of the county's liens to be included as part of the sheriff's sale, so that prospective buyers are on notice that that there are these liens on the property that have been reduced to judgment. I understand there's also some potential tax liens that could be collected, but right now I think we're kind of in a situation where we need to wait and see what's going to happen. I think it's a good thing that this activity is happening on the property, and you could maybe read into that you know, maybe if they thought this property was going to be auctioned off, they wouldn't be trying so hard to clean it up still. But it's too early to really come up with much of a reaction or a strategy, just because it's so unclear how that's all going to shake out. So that's a developing situation, and I'm keeping, you know, those communications open with CDPHE and also with Mr. McCabe to try to be as up to date as possible, given everything that's going on that. And then I've got a child welfare docket tomorrow. That seems to be picking up again a little bit, but those are some of the more high relevance issues I've been working on in the past week or so.
Thank you, Stephen. Travis, what do you have for us?
Last week, we met with KRW and Associates on the audit of the Sheriff's Office financials. A lot of time spent on the racetrack contract. A final version has been provided to them, but it appears that the potential tenant wants additional concessions, and they have the final contract, and we'll wait and see if they provide it next week. We have exchanged our fleet management software. We're going, instead of fobs, we're transitioning to hardwire devices. Again, met with our attorney and the state regarding the collective bargaining. I did submit that preliminary information that we got from La Plata County on theirs, just to try to get some sort of potential costs to the county as it relates to collective bargaining. And then CCI Zoom meetings Friday on all the legislation that's coming up, and we'll be attending that again Thursday and Friday.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Commissioner Lindsay, I'll let you go first this time.
Yes, over this past week, I did attend the MBI meeting. The other commissioners were there. We were kind of assured that right now we're in not really good shape, but not bad shape on water, but there's a lot of nervous out there. A lot of people were pretty nervous. And also, I have city council tonight and a Region 9 board meeting on Thursday. And I did receive a complaint about the smell in the area of IFA and Highland Terrace. So we're still trying to figure out what we can do legally. So other than that, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Culpepper.
Yeah, not much to report this week. Like Kent said, we were all three at the MVI annual meeting. We do have one new board member on that board this year. We'll be serving. Glad to get some of these people to step up and offer their services to help serve on some of these boards. And I extended that invitation to a bunch of them out there at our meeting Saturday to try to get more people involved and serve on some of these boards. Other than that, I'm going to be at Water Congress here at the end of the week for a couple of days, so I'll be out of town, but that's about all I got.
All right. So just to kind of echo what Travis had stated, all three of us also were able to meet with KRW, who is doing the sheriff's audit individually, and had a conversation with those people. I was able to meet with Senator Hickenlooper's aide, Lisa Poole, along with finance and administration, as we dove deeper into our PILT funding, SRS, and Title III with our SRS. Here again, this is such an old formula, and where we're at, where it lies, it doesn't look like there's a lot of latitude for change, but hopefully we'll keep heading down that path. I just struggled that we get 48 cents per acre for the federal lands in this community, and they want us to continue to function with the rising costs that we are dealing with on a daily basis. Then attended, so here's a new acronym. It's YIGBY, and that stands for Yes in God's Backyard. That was basically brought forth by a Castle Rock church group so that they can use their lands and develop them as for housing, basically what they want to do as far as land use, to shelter individuals. I'm going to leave it at that. Pretty interesting conversation. We did have our board to board Thursday night in Dolores. Quick and easy. It was held at the community center in Dolores. Pretty good conversations and updates with the rest of all of the towns, and seeing what they are doing and what's going on. Again, we had the steering committee meeting on Friday with CCI to go over these 3 tables of bills that we'll be dealing with this coming Thursday and Friday. So I think Commissioner Copenhaver and I will both be in Denver the rest of this week, dealing with water and state issues. I did get to the MVI meeting as stated, and then I actually went to Dolores' meeting last night. They did appoint a new judge. The judge that we have out in Dolores County, Kristen Tarrant, she was also chosen to be the municipal judge for Dolores last night. That was probably the highlight. And then just a lot of conversation around, really where are they going? What are they doing? They keep wanting to bring more business into Dolores, but it's when you have that small of a community, it's hard to sustain any kind of a business. So I get their struggles and their pains, but they are working to do something as far as development for their economy there in Dolores. Like Commissioner Lindsay stated, I too had complaints over the smells coming from Highland Terrace or the property right to the rear of there. And we are trying to do something, but here again, it's a pretty touchy situation of being able to enter and exit some of these private piece of properties. So we are continuing to try and get something done up there. So if you do smell that smell, it's not because of lack of trying. We are trying to get something done, but I mean, we can't just bulldoze in there and take it over.
And if I can jump in on that issue too, I know the commissioners are getting a lot of complaints about this issue. I talked to the health department about this, and there are some circumstances where a stinky pond could be more directly addressed by the county, specifically if it was a sewage issue. And so, based on the conversations I've had, it's not really clear that that's the case, but it could certainly be investigated by our health department to try to figure out if it is or not. And then part of my comments to the is also that there's probably a more clear private cause of action in terms of a private nuisance action brought by individuals that is out there to be made if people who were suffering from this smell are wanting to do that. That might be an effective way to deal with that, but it's not really something that the county's able to bring quite the same way. And so I think I haven't talked to Melissa about this in about a week, but I think she's doing what she can in her role. And like you said, it's not just so simple to go in there and get it cleaned up. So we're doing what we can, I think.
Yeah, but I think we'll ask for the help of the public, because I think, like you just stated, they might have more of I'm not sure if it would be a civil action, but possibly a civil action to bring forth against the homeowner or property owner up there because of odor or potential hazard from that. So we're working on it, but we also need your help also, guys. So it's getting out there. The stench is it's drifting pretty far away. The phone call I had last night was actually several miles away. So, all right.
Yeah, IFA had an event Saturday and it wasn't very nice. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn this January 28, 2025 meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.